All right, welcome back. So we're going to start talking about chapter 4, starting to work through some things. One of the things I want to mention is we can do everything with our while loops, but there are some additional kinds of loops that are usually very handy. One of the most common loops that we're going to introduce you to is something called a for loop. And a for loop, going into it, says we're going to do a certain number of things at a set number of times. So it's really handy when we need to create something and we know we're going to do it, say 4 times. We're going to work through a function. We're going to look at some other pieces, and we're going to look how we can manipulate text. One of the great things about Python is that it lets us do some of these things really easily that other languages don't let us do, or we can do them. It just takes a little more manipulating on our part, I guess I should say. So let's start out, and I'm going to create our first program, and we're going to first look at this. And it's really this loopy string program that's in our book on beginning at about page 87. So we're going to recreate this loopy string program, and we're going to allow you to put in the words. So we're going to say word equals input, and then we're going to put in please enter a word, or work, I guess. All right. So then we have this value of word, and we're going to actually use a for loop in a new way. So normally we could say for x, and you're going to say 1 to 50 minus. Well, we're not going to do that. We're going to actually do something interesting that Python lets us do, and that's this ability to work through a variable. So we're going to say for letter in word. So we're going to run this loop essentially as many times as we have letters, and we're going to print letter. Then I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to come back out and do my input just so I can once again hold it open, just kind of that good programming. Press any key to exit. So I want to try this. Oh, helps if the cat doesn't jump on the keyboard while I'm trying to type. Also, I have enough issues typing. All right, so the first thing I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to save this. So I'm going to click File, Save As, go over here to Documents and store it in this folder that we've created for Python Spring. And I'm going to call this Loopy. So now that I've saved it, now I can run it. And so I hit F5, enter a word. And notice it spells that out one line at a time. Oh, well, that might be kind of interesting. If this software can bring this out explicitly. So most languages, here's what we'd have to do. We'd have to get a length of this, your input. You would have to then assign it to some value, and you'd have to work your way through slicing it into pieces. And we're going to show you how easy it is to slice this data in here, but Python does some of these things really easily for us. So it's one of those really great languages that we can jump in and we can do that. So on page 90, we talk about that Python is really flexible in creating a for loop, and some of the things it can do is pretty interesting. So I'm going to modify this one just a little bit, and I'm going to show you a traditional for loop. So we're going to introduce a slightly new piece in here. So I'm going to delete that for now. Chunk. And I'm going to call this counter. So again, we're going to demonstrate a typical for loop. So for I in range 10. So now everything in this indented area then is going to run, and we're going to actually print our I, and We're going to see what we can do here. So this might be kind of interesting. We want to put in a space. So let's see if we can do that. Let's see what happens first. Let's just print I. Sometimes it's very useful to just go in here. I'm just going to put my input just to hold the program open if we were to run it that way. Yeah, it'll be fine for that. And notice it sits here and it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, we want to do it just a little bit differently. We maybe want to display it differently, but it certainly added our numbers 0 through 10, just like we wanted. All right. And then down at the bottom, it printed our press any. Got it. So we want to change this up a little bit, and maybe we want to change this. Instead of counting to 10, we want it to count to 100. Easily enough done. Let's make sure it works. There it takes off and counts to, well, it's 100 numbers. It's 0 through 99, so we got to remember that. Maybe we want to count in a range of numbers. So we want to count 5 to 65, and we want it to go up by 5. And notice now I'm putting in 3 numbers in there. 5, 10, 15, 25, 60. And notice it doesn't quite get to that 65. So when you're designing one of these and you look at it and you go, oh, I need... So notice if I change that just slightly, let's see what happens. Then it actually prints our 65. So you have to go a little bit beyond. Well, if I can go up, I can probably go backwards. I hope anyway. So let's try this. We want to count down. So we want to count from 100 to 1 and by -4. Let's see if we can do it. And that's one of the things we need to do is get used to that idea of practicing. So 1 didn't work. Let's see if we can get it down to 0. And again, practicing makes perfect here. I want it to actually, so 0, so I'm going to go 1 below it. Now let's see if that works. Oh, look, now we got all the way down to 0. So just one of those little quirks when we look at that code that we need to adjust to make life a little easier for us. So loops are really, really easy to do it. We can count by 5. We can count over and over again. So page 90, 89 through about 92 starts talking about these for loops. You need to practice them, try them, see what happens. See what happens. So counting backwards, we're also going to look then at how do I start using some other aspects that are kind of handy. And I gave you a hint earlier that we're going to look at, can we loop through something easily? And again, this is one area where Python excels. And so we're going to create one. I want to look at a couple of different functions. One of them I want to look at is getting a length of something. And we can also look and see if a value is in our list here. So I'm going to delete this. And I've started on about page 94 or somewhere roughly on there, depending on which version of this book you have. So we want to look at one. We're going to call it Message Analyzer. Well, if we need a message, we're going to have to get one. And so the easiest way we're going to do is we're going to say message equals, this is a test message. Now, the book says input. I'm just going to do it this way just to make it sure that we see what that is. And we want to see what the length of this is. So print move it down a couple lines. Then we're going to say the length of your message is, and then comma. And then we can actually put a function then right into this. So there's some interesting, powerful things we can do here. Length of message. In a lot of languages, we'd have to convert this originally, make sure that we have that second, because remember, this right here, you're passing in that variable into this function length, okay? So the traditional way we'd do this, honestly, in a lot of languages, is we'd have one called length equals, and then our function length of message. And then we would print that out. But honestly, we can put them inside of here. And as long as you don't do it too crazy, it makes a lot of sense to do it in one line. So I'm going to put my input in. And if you don't remember why we do this, I'll show you here in just a second. So I'm going to run this. And I've just kept it the same name, this loopy or whatever it is, just because we're just practicing here. Use a lot of program names. Try things. You're not going to hurt anything. You cannot break your computer. So what it says here, the length of your message is 22 characters. All right. And the reason I left this alone up here is I want to look at what it sees as 22 characters. Because when I first look at this, I'm going to say, well, that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Well, that's not 22 characters. But remember, the computer doesn't care if it's a space, it's a strange character. It's counting from one spot to the other. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 20, 21, 22. And we're 22, including spaces, including everything. That all counts. It's all being stored. So that's one thing we can do, is we can say, all right, I know how long this message is. Well, if I can tell how long it is, I can start to do some other functions in there. So here's our next little fun toy we can do. So again, Python, and you could do this in other languages, it just takes a little more effort to set it up. So if E in message, so if that is true, print it's and then we can always do an else and then a print not in your message. So I'm hoping when we run this, it's going to screen through there and see if there's an E, and it's going to say, all right, yep, there should be one, and it's going to print that. So let's give this a whirl and try it. Length of your message is 22. It's in your message. Oh, pretty slick. Remember I said I want to show you so we remember why we do this. I got to grab my right folder here. P for Python. I have way too many folders in here because I stole my wife's computer, and she is Captain Organized here. So let me get to Python for Spring 2020. So the reason we make sure we put that empty input in the bottom, it's this. So I'm going to run whatever program it is. Let's run Loopy here. And when I run Loopy, instead of going through the idle environment and running it, notice it comes up in a black screen. It actually runs. There are programs that will run in Windows. And it holds it open and it says, all right, press any key to exit, and then it disappears. If I don't have this in here, so easiest way to make it go away is put a comment tag on it. So now it's not going to run. It's not going to be known to the program. And I'm going to go up here and go File, Save, or Control S if you want to do it that way. So now I come back to my Python and I try to run it. And what I'm going to get is it just flashes on the screen. Now, of course, it always wants to flash in on the other screen. You can't see it over there, but it runs and executes and dies immediately and then goes away. So it's a problem if we don't put it in, and that's why we do it. Short of long of it there. So we're able to do some manipulation already of these. So I'm going to add a couple of other things in. So if I can find out things like the length, and I can see if it's got a certain variable or a certain number or a certain item in there, and we can test this. You could go change this to, let's do this. So message is now T. Saving it. Notice it says message is 1. It's not in your message. So we've got a couple things here that we're already doing that are pretty impressive. So now we need to think about, can I print out something or start manipulating these and access them individually? I know how many there are. I know I can search through them to find it. Can I do the ability or get the ability to start working with them and start grabbing an individual element by itself? All right, so work with me here. I am going to look on page, flipping around here. I think it's page 96 in this particular version I have. I will say that it does vary a little bit. I'm going to create a new one. And I'm going to drag him over here so he sits in top. Close that one. Chunk. No, don't care. All right. So I'm going to create a new program. We're going to call this one random access. It's handy because the book does it for us. And we're going to look at string indexing. So we need to think about a couple of things, but we're going to get there. So we're going to create, because at some point it may be handy to have it, so we're going to import random. In fact, quite often, my template that I use for a lot of these weird things that I do, I almost always have random as one of the libraries I load just by default, because I find that I'm almost always grabbing it for some reason or another. And I need a word. So I'm just going to assign one. We could do an input. We could do all kinds of things. And I'm going to call it computer. Well, the next piece I want to do then is make sure that we can print it, and we know that it's in there. So we're going to print the word is word. So now it's going to print out whatever value we put in there. So I may not see this code is why we would do that. And so we need a couple of other things. And so the first one we're going to look at is we're going to create one called high. And we're going to call it length of word. So length of word should tell us how many characters there are in that string. And we're also going to do that. We're also going to do it here and do something a little different. And one of the things we're going to do is we're also going to take low. Now, low, we're going to simply do this. We're going to say the negative value of length of word. All right, so it may be handy. Let's just do this. And let's print high, low, just so we see what they are. Always good to just kind of experiment, input, press. Oh. So, I'm curious. I want to see how something are going to happen. I want to experiment. So I have to save it. And we're going to call this random. And so 8 and negative 8. All right, that makes sense. We really just kind of multiplied that. So what I would like to do what I would like to do is then set up something kind of interesting. I want to randomly grab elements out of here. So I know I have a random piece here, so it's in there, so I know that I can do some other things. So I'm going to create a loop. So for I in range, we can do whatever we want. Let's do 10 just because it's handy. So we're going to create a loop that's going to do this 10 times. And what we're trying to do, so position, we're going to get another value, equals random.randRange. And that random range, I'm going to grab, so I'm going to have it from -8 to high, or +8 in this case. And then I'm going to do this. Print. Now, I'm using the square bracket key, so it's above the enter over here on the right side of your keyboard. So notice that. We almost always use that square bracket. So, watch what's going to happen. So we're going to put in that bracket, whatever that position is. Now, I'm going to also now use our tab key just to move it over a space. So same as what we did with a new line, but we're going to do it with a T. And I'm going to separate my next section where I'm going to say word, and I'm going to enter in that position. So by putting in those square brackets. All right, so this just is going to display it on the screen. This right-hand side is actually where the magic happens. In other words, we're taking this variable and saying, I want whatever's in whatever a specific position is. And I'm going to print those out. So we're going to make a printout of 10 randomly selected pieces in there. So let's see if I typed it correctly. If I did anything really strange, who knows? Let's take a look really quick. And so what it does over here, so word -2 position equals E. Okay, so -2, 1, 2. So counting from the left, it goes -2. Word 1, position 1, so if I come this way, is O. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. First position's 1. It should be C. Again, that computer starts counting at 0, so it's 0, 1 is C, is 0, the O is 1. And so you can see it just kind of sequenced those a little bit. So we could also do this if you want to just see. Here we did it randomly, so we could show you how we could scramble something. So I could scramble these letters then, if I wanted to. So what happens if I just take this I? And I could certainly do this if I really wanted to. Hang on. Position equals, well, let's do this. Trunk. Let's just eliminate that line for a second. I'm going to add a new line in. Nope. Well, that's working well for me. Let me try that again. All right, come to the end of it, new line. So just to see if we can do it in order, let's see what happens. So we're going to go position equals I. So we're just going to take whatever value of I, and honestly I'm overdoing it because I would have just shoved I in there, but I don't want to retype that line. So let's see what happens. Oh, so notice it tried. It went 0, 1, 2, 3, computer, and then it said, oh, but there's nothing there. And so one of the things when we do these, we have to be careful of where that ends. So here we have position 8, but we tried to get to position 9 and 10. And it doesn't allow us to do that. So I could go here. Maybe I just misspelled it. I had 2 S's. And so there it would actually work. It pulls all 10 positions down. Notice 10 positions, 0 through 9, and it indexes every one of those. So on page, somewhere in here, on the top of my page 99, It kind of shows you that index and shows you have 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 positions. You're referencing them by that index position, and that it also can work frontwards or backwards. I don't do a lot of the stuff backwards, honestly, but it can be useful when I'm going to do that. So page 100 talks about something called immutability. I can't speak. Immutability or unchanging. We're not able to change that variable directly. And in fact, we can see that. So we can access them to read an index position directly. So I can access any of those positions directly. So if I wanted to just print down here, print, and I wanted to print word, or what did I call it? Yeah, word. And I wanted to print position 3, I can do that. That's not a problem. What I would like to do is be able to change something, and in this case it's a little harder to do it. So I can print this, so no doubt, and it printed my P. What I would like to do is say, all right, I want to assign a value to that. So I would like to say word position 3, and I want to change that to, I'd like to do that. So let's see what happens. Oh, it says, oh, does not support item assignment. And it's going to give me an error and not let me do it. All right. So we can't do it directly. However, what we can do is we can create a second string that has the elements we want. There's nothing that's saying I can't concatenate or add to a string. I can't just randomly pull pieces out. And so we're going to do one more here really quickly on this assignment. I think I've got 27 minutes in. Yep, I don't want to go too long and have everybody falling asleep on me. So I'm going to do one more. File, new. Drag that over. All right, so this one we're going to look at, and we'll call it vowel eliminator. So it's going to teach us some concepts that we can use. So we're going to create a message, and we're going to assign it to a value of, this is the message we are talking about. The book, I think, does an input very similar. We're just going to do this just to make life a little quicker. And we're going to have that as a message, and we're also going to create one called new message. And we're going to assign that to nothing, so we know it's blank. And we also need our constant for, we need to know what all the vowels are. Now, it really doesn't make a lot of difference to Python. Giving it capital letters does not say it's automatically, it really does anything with it. But it's for our use to say, hey, we know that's a constant, and we're not going to change that. So A, E, I, O, and U tend to be most of the vowels. We also have that pesky Y, but for now we're going to eliminate that. All right. So now we created our constant, we created our letters here. Now we need to see what happens. So I'm going to create a loop, because we know one of the things we're going to do is we're going to have to loop through these. So for letter in message. So in other words, it's going to take each letter of whatever our message is, and each time it's going to go through this loop. Everything then inside this indent's going to run, and we're going to use an if statement. So if letter, and we're going to use one of those dot commands, lower. So we'll look at that here in just a second. So if letter dot lower, not in vowels, we're going to new So we're going to add letter by letter, and we're going to concatenate them in. So in other words, you're adding it to it. All right. So kind of a new deal. And we're going to say print a new string has been created. And then we're going to do the new message and just display what it is. I probably want a space in there. I'm really bad about putting those in. Oh. Jeez. All right. So right now, that's going to go through one at a time. And so then at the end of this program, so after we get through this entire loop, all the way back at the left-hand indent, we're going to create another print statement, and we're going to print one that says, this is your message minus vowels. Shunk. New message. Not new message, new message. And then, of course, down at the bottom, we're going to have our input. So let's see if this works. Can't guarantee. I was typing really fast. I've had a cat trying to help me type. All of the fun things at home. So let's see what happens. And I need to save this. So we're going to call this one new message. All right. So it's giving us an error message already. All right. Invalid syntax. So where is it giving us this message at? We need to take kind of a look here. That one is actually my error message from before, so it doesn't ever actually make it out of the compiler to actually run. So let's see what kind of silliness I did in here. All right, and when we look at it, as I got in a hurry, notice what I forgot. I forgot a comma to say, hey, this is my text string that I'm putting in directly, and then I'm accessing a variable. So now let's try it and see what happens. So here we say a new string has been created, and then here, notice it takes it one letter at a time. T, TH, THS, because it took out the S, and so it runs through there. So it's kind of interesting. It almost works like a pyramid, and it takes it out and it creates this new message one letter at a time. So I can't directly change that assignment, but I can certainly rebuild it in a new variable. So I'm taking an old string and I'm adding a new string in there in its place. So make sure you see this, you see what I'm doing. This here, what this does, so up in vowels, instead of having to do those as lowercase and uppercase, so here I'm saying if letter dot lower, so in other words, I'm passing in one of those dot notation functions. If I didn't do this, so let's see what happens. Same message. And notice now, if I had any vowels that were capital, well, let's go make one just to demonstrate what would happen. So let's run that again. So notice this I here is still included because it's a capital I, so it doesn't get caught with matching into those vowels. So it's one way we can do it. Letter dot lower. So we have to do the open and close parentheses because it is a function. We're passing in a value. We can use something very similar. So remember back last chapter we said, hey, type in yes or no or yes or no. So what if we did this? Now that we know how to create that and change those, we can access that position 0, so you could look at just the Y or just the N. So even if they typed in yes, you're only going to access and look at that Y. And so we're getting some more tools that you can slice and dice and work your way through in here. All right, next video we'll start talking about how we can slice things up a little more, and we're going to introduce you to a new tool called a tuple. And then we're actually going to work our way through creating our first real game. We're going to look at heroes inventory, and we're going to look at how we can see some of those in tuples. All right, hope everybody's having a great evening or morning or whatever part of the time it is you find this. Talk to you later.